2, 1. All right. Whoops. Had my notes for The Farewell. I didn't watch The Farewell. I already watched The Farewell already. I watched a little movie called Black is King. So, this was written, directed, starring Beyonce for a Disney Plus original film. Now, I've been slacking on 2020 movies. Usually it takes me a bit more to watch more recent movies. Usually I look back at older films, but the only movie I watched this year from 2020, I watched two. One of them was a Louis C.K. special, so that doesn't really count. The other film was The Gentleman by Guy Ritchie, and that was it. That's all the movies I watched in 2020. Obviously, we had the whole pandemic thing going on, but just nothing striked me as interesting. So I resorted to Queen Bee. You know who Queen Bee is. It's Beyonce. Now, what do I think of Beyonce? I'm not a Beyonce fan. I'm not a beehive, like they like to call themselves. I will acknowledge that the album Lemonade was pretty good. I think Beyonce is good when she surrounds herself with talented people. So Lemonade, you had people like Jack White, you had Kendrick Lamar. And so everything she does solo, when she surrounds herself with talented people, I think that's when she's good. So this is basically a visual album movie. She's not the first person to do this. We recently got Janelle Monáe doing it with OK Computer. Not OK Computer, no. Dirty Computer. Different artist, different album. So yeah, it's not a new concept. You can go all the way back to Pink Floyd when they did it with The Wall and when The Who did it with Tommy. So this is not really a new thing. But alas, let's see, did Beyonce push it further or take it a step back? The only way to talk about this kind of film is to separate it, talk about the album itself, and then talk about the video, the film component to it. So I'm just gonna break it down into those halves. And at the end, I'm going to be rating just the film, okay? Beehive, swarm of bees, don't come running after me now, okay? I'm just judging the film. I'm a movie guy. I know my music a bit, but I'm in no means a Beyonce expert. But overall, if you're just looking at the songs, I think this is a more solid album compared to other Beyonce projects. I really like when Beyonce leans full into the African culture. The songs that I find not as interesting are the ones that sound a bit more like your run-of-the-mill R&B, poppy Beyonce songs. And those were more towards the beginning, and I was starting to get a little worried because it had little blemishes of African sounds in there, but it wasn't leaning nearly enough into the African culture at the beginning anyway, and it was really not meshing well with the visual aspect to it. But once the soundtrack becomes more African influenced, then that's when I became more interested. And just like I was talking about what she did with Lemonade and surrounding herself with talented people, she does the same thing here. She did a project not too long ago with Jay-Z, just a whole album with Jay-Z, and that one was pretty much a stinker. I didn't listen to the whole album, but from what I've heard, oof. But this isn't the case here. She surrounds herself with both American artists, so you have people like Pharrell, Jay-Z, Kendrick, and but you have some African artists too as well, and the ones with the African artists especially are the ones that stood out to me. Songs on the soundtrack that stood out in general, I think the best song here was I don't have the titles to the song because I was watching a movie, so I didn't have the track listing in front of me, but something Jealous song, I don't know, that was the best song to me. It's the third song, I believe. Also the song she did with Pharrell, I thought that one was good. The last two songs are also very good. The songs that aren't too good, the one with Kendrick Lamar was really lacking. It was really... And the first two songs as well, I was worried. It sounded more Beyonce than what Beyonce was trying to go for. Okay? But overall, I think this, just listening to it, from a soundtrack perspective, pretending this is an album, I think it's a good album. Alas, I'm reviewing a movie. Okay, it's not an album I'm reviewing a movie, but I had to get that out of the way. From a movie standpoint, there's a lot that's good here, and a lot that I didn't really like. Okay? If you compare this to what Janelle Monáe did recently with Dirty Computer, I don't think it's as good. If you compare it to The Wall, like I was saying before, definitely not as good. But there are some things to be admired here. The cinematography is very good. No complaints there. Nice vibrant colors, what you would expect with African culture. And I liked, in fact, that celebration of African culture. I liked the costumes, the sets. So those weren't my problems at all. I also like the themes that she tackled. It's very relevant to today's society. We have the whole George Floyd protest going on right now. So obviously this movie didn't come out in response to that, but it came out in a very timely manner. So it was a matter of good timing there. But yeah, I like the themes she tries to delve into, and I like the overall premise. I liked what she was going for. I can see what she was going for, but the problems I have come mostly to focus. Now, this is an abstract movie. If I had to compare it to something, it would be more like kind of like a Terrence Malick kind of thing, like a Tree of Life. But where Tree of Life and this differ is that Tree of Life has a nice focus to it. There's a lot of abstract elements going on, but you have a core to latch on to. While here, in the first three songs, you're introduced to this character who's a child, and you think that child is going to be the vehicle to get himself into these scenarios. But the movie loses focus of that child, and it becomes more of, dare I say, I gotta watch out. There might be some Beyonce fans in this garage. Kind of feels like a Beyonce vanity project at times. I wish the focus was less on her. She took a back seat maybe, and it became this kid being a vehicle, putting himself in scenarios, celebrating different black music, whether that be gospel or African music or hip-hop. I would have liked to see just that kid being used as a vehicle to find himself into these different scenarios and delve into those different themes of black culture. But instead, you get this it really feels like a bunch of music videos just stitched together. So it's not as coherent as you would expect from a 1 hour and a half movie. And that's the big problem to me. So as music videos, they stand well on their own. But as a coherent 1 hour and a half film for Disney Plus, not so much. So this was credited as directed by Beyonce, but it was co-directed by someone else, and then you have a huge list of other directors. That might be the cause of that incoherence. So bunch of directors. It's not like something like The Wall or Tommy where you had one director. So you had all these multitude of directors all putting their fingers in the stew. And speaking of fingers in the stew, I think Disney had a hand in this as well. There's some Disney samples in there. The soundtrack, I don't know if this is the album, I don't know if this is the movie, but there's some Lion King samples in there, and they don't fit. You're listening to this very powerful Beyonce song, and all of a sudden, 2 minutes later, you hear Seth Rogen as Pumbaa, like, Hakuna Matata, man. And it's like, oh boy, it felt a little jarring. And I was hoping that it was just at the beginning of the film, and it wasn't. It's throughout the whole film. And I was hoping it was limited to what's his fucking face, Darth Vader guy. Oh, what am I doing? I'm blanking on this. James Earl Jones. Yeah, the first few were James Earl Jones, and sure it was corny, but it's James Earl Jones's voice, so you're like, okay. But then it becomes the cast of the new Lion King, Billie Eilish or Bill Eichner or whatever that guy's name is, and Seth Rogen and Childish Gambino, and it just doesn't fit. And you're tackling these very heavy themes of family, and it's a pretty... I don't picture a kid sitting down to watch this movie because it's a very abstract, very visual movie, and I think a kid would get bored at it. So why would you sample Lion King of all things? I don't know. It was a strange decision. I'll give Beyonce a pass. I think it was studio interference there, but oh boy. But just a lot of choices in general felt jarring like that. Not just the Lion King samples. There's like this weird part. This is not like a complaint, but this is just like an example. There's like this weird synchronized swimming number in like the middle of a song. The one with Jay-Z, I believe. And I felt like I was watching Austin Powers 2, the opening that had the synchronized swimming. All the way, there's a part where Beyonce is swimming up to the camera, and I just expected her to go in the camera and say, "Yeah, baby," like Austin Powers did. That's not a complaint about the movie, like specifically, but there's just a lot of stuff that would just pull me out of nowhere. Sometimes they would dance, and the camera would be at 2 times speed, but yeah. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm addicted to Austin Powers, but Jackie, please, cut to that clip. Show them what I'm talking about, because I'm sure they're at home. Everyone's at home confused about what I'm talking about. But yeah, that scene in particular reminded me of Austin Powers. And speaking of that, speaking of that whole musical number with Jay-Z, this poor Jay-Z guy, man, he can't catch a break. He has to be in every one of his wife's projects. You know? Like every time I see him in a Beyonce project, whether it's the Carters or now this project, it really looks like he just doesn't want to be there. He has this look on his face, and he's just like, man, I wish I was in one of those cars with Kanye just drifting around back in those Watch the Throne days. Those were the good old days. But you know what? Beyonce's got him by the balls. He cheated. So she wants to put him in every one of her projects. She has the right to, you know? But yeah, that guy didn't look happy being in those music videos. He's got his hair all messed up, you know. He's got that face like, what am I doing here? Jay-Z, if you're watching this, I know you're not. But we've all been there, man. We've all been pussy whipped. Not pussy whipped. You know what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm just... These aren't even complaints about the movie. I just go out on tangents here. But, yeah, those were the main problems I had. Also, Beyonce's acting itself. I haven't seen her Lion King remake. The only thing I've seen with Beyonce is Austin Powers 3. That was the only movie I've seen where Beyonce had to act. But when she delivers monologues in this... it feels a little try-hardy. Doesn't really work. It feels a little preachy, like she's talking down to you, and that's a line delivery problem. I don't think that's her intent. But, yeah, it feels like when you have to do a speech in your English class back in high school, there was always that one student who was really try-hard, who would put way too much emotion into their speech, and they'd talk about some heavy-handed subject like, I don't know, America's tendency to invade countries and stuff like that. And she'd be like, no! And it was like the most intense thing ever. That's what it felt like when Beyonce would deliver these monologues. And they're throughout the whole film between each song. So overall, as an album, this works. This is better than what I've heard from other Beyonce songs. Not quite Lemonade, but not as bad as that Carter's thing she did. From a film standpoint, I think what she's trying to do isn't necessarily new, and there's no reason to watch this other than if you're a fan of Beyonce, then it's appropriate to watch this movie. But other than that, I don't see any reason to visit this movie, unfortunately. And even though I'm not a big Beyonce fan, I went in like hoping to watch a good movie because I'm on like I'm not a Beehive person, but I'm rooting for her. I don't like watching bad movies, and this is by no means a bad movie. This movie is a bit of a flatline to me. I didn't waste my time, but I didn't gain anything. So it didn't offend me in either way. But so I think if I had to give a score, I'd go. Now this is coming from me, who's not a Beyonce fan. I'm going 5 out of 10. It's a very neutral experience to me as far as a film goes. And I just wanted to end on this debate about Beyonce, Queen Bee. I'm not that big into modern music. I think my music knowledge ended in 2002. But why is it when Beyonce thinks she's a god, no one bats an eye? But when Kanye West thinks he's a god, everyone starts losing their mind. And I don't think the solution is to stop calling out Kanye for being an egomaniac. I think we should start calling out Beyonce. Be like, hey, get off your high horse. Stop calling yourself Queen Bee. And Kanye, you stop calling yourself Jesus or whatever you call yourself. Well, what can I say? Who am I to judge? I'm in a friggin' basement. I got some sweaty armpits, wearing this stupid t-shirt with red sleeves, and they're selling millions and millions of albums. Maybe if I sold millions of albums, I'd have a little ego complex too. But right now, I'm just a guy in his garage, talking to a camera, hoping to get at least 5 views on this video. I'm counting on you, Mom. I'm counting on you, Dad. Let's go. Let's bring those views up to 5. That's all I have to say about this. Black is King. Beyonce. There we go.